All right, this meeting will come to order. It's the meeting of the Conservation, Community Preservation Act Committee, January 10th at 6 o'clock. And why don't we say who we are, seeing that no one's here writing down the minutes. So I'm Elaine Pluta, Chair.
Mike Sullivan.
Mimi Patch.
Amy Landau.
Andrew McMahon.
Marco Crescentini.
Rosemary Arnold.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The first item on the agenda is acceptance of minutes, and we can do the first three, 9/17, 10/1, and 10/15. I did have some corrections, but they weren't anything, really, that changed the context of what we were discussing. It's just that he repeated himself a couple times. So I think we'll just leave that.
He also misspelled my name on the first one.
Oh, geez. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I think,
Yeah.
is this on the minute?
This was the packet that we got at the last meeting. There was those 3 minutes were in there. And so the other 2, Mimi has not had a chance to look over. And although Ryan did do it, but we need to have her final okay or someone's final okay. So anyways, is everybody else set on the 9/17, 10/1, and 10/15 minutes to make a motion?
Motion to accept.
Okay, and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We were going to have a discussion with Marcos Marrero and his whoever he brought with him, and I don't know if we should skip on the agenda and go right to that so we don't make them wait forever. Although I definitely wanted, Andrew has to leave early, and I want to make sure we get our treasurer. Okay. All right. Okay. So Marcos, and would you like to introduce who's here with you?
Good evening. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Marcos Marrero, Director of Planning and Economic Development. To my right is Sarah Mayer-Zimbler. She's with the Office of Planning and Economic Development as well. And Brian Roy to my left. He is Acting Gas Superintendent, is that? Yeah, with the Holyoke Gas and Electric. Jim Lavelle sends his regards. He could not make it today. He had a conflict, but Brian can answer any questions on behalf of the HG&E, which owns the Richardson Station building.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. So, what happened was, I'll explain what happened at our meeting as to why we had asked you to be here. The 3 projects that the city owns and that the Holyoke redevelopment is doing some, and Holyoke Gas and Electric. What happened is the funds you were asking for was just speculative. I mean, you want us to speculate that we're going to put this money aside for you, and then hopefully that will attract a developer. That was our understanding? Mm-hmm. Is that how it worked? Okay, so our concern is and I'm speaking for myself mainly, but everyone else can put their 2 cents in. My concern is I would rather use the money that if we do fund those projects, and actually do something. Like for the train station, we were talking, we should do the roof. Let's do the roof and get it buttoned up, and then we'll be able to say to a developer, look, the roof's done, it's buttoned up, it's not leaking, or whatever. That was our concern about the 3 projects that were presented to us. So Mike, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, and a little more than that. Also, if there wasn't a developer coming forward, something like a project like that would help to preserve the building, prevent further deterioration, in effect mothball it for the future. If it's going to be, another few years, it's one of the buildings we really want to save in Holyoke and make sure it doesn't get worse.
Okay. Does anybody else?
I don't even know if you wanted us to react to that, or so I'm just waiting.
No, go ahead. I guess you
all yours.
Yeah.
All right, So again, Brian Roy from the Gas and Electric. Thanks for inviting us. And Mike, to speak to your comments, the building itself has been buttoned up. So we have actually, holes in the roof, linear leaking. We have patched it. So the building itself is secure. We had gotten a price in 2018 for the roof, and to repair the roof as a slate roof, which it currently is, was over $1 million. So for the funds that were allocated, again, it was all speculative. We are not at a point where we can commit to any of our funds to repairing it at this time. So where we are is we think it may be best for us to at least do an assessment of the building, figure out what else may need to be done, get a price for the roof, get a price if the windows need to be done. So we at least have a better game plan as to where the building is now, where it needs to go. One of the other concerns we have is it's currently zoned as downtown residential. So looking at possibly rezoning it for IG Industrial General, which may help actually look at bringing in different facilities for development as well.
So if I may address one issue, which is the cost. So the numbers that you have before you are based on assumptions and extrapolations from similar size developments that we've seen in the city. But beyond one quote that the G&E has for the roof, it's not like we have an engineered plan for the rehabilitation of the building and therefore have gone to bid and have a comprehensive cost list. This is a back of the envelope estimate based off of other estimates that we've seen in other similar projects. So this kind of informs the question of, how much will it take and what can you do with $150,000? It is meant to be an incentive. It is not meant to necessarily cover the entire cost of the roof or of the windows, but it could go towards that. Not too dissimilar to how developers would layer funding of other programs. If you think of historic tax credits, you get a tax credit, you actually, most of the time you sell it and you monetize that. That becomes part of the funding for the project. If you think of locally the Housing Development Incentive Program, there's a local tax incentive, but the really big get for the developer in the short term is the state funding that comes with it. Trying to see you, Mike, too, as well, where they can provide you, they can cover the cost of 20% of eligible expenses. So for the Cubit, for example, that represented a couple $100,000 for them. So that's incredibly valuable because that comes off of your debt service. So that's what we're trying to mimic here. In the past, we have indeed done work in advance of having the developer in the way that you suggest. The closest example is 216 Appleton Street, the Far Alpaca building. In that case, we dedicated about just over $300,000. I think it was like $325 all in, between work, design work, environmental testing, and the like, to take out all the asbestos in the building. And at the end of the day, I think it was about 90% of the asbestos, some that we couldn't reach. And the logic behind that was precisely if that will be an incentive because it's reducing costs at the development side of the project, but also if we're never successful at securing a developer and this building has to come down, either because we have to tear it down or because gravity does its thing, then we can take it out as clean material, not as dirty material, and that would also save costs on the city later on. So that was one type of expenditure, which was removing hazardous material, right, asbestos. When we're talking about reconstructing a building, there are challenges, right? One of the challenges is it's all speculative, right? No matter what direction you go in. So say we did you want to be smart in what you're picking, right? Some things are more speculative than others. Obviously, if we try to do something architectural or paint-like, right? Like if we were to paint, that would probably be somewhat ridiculous because we don't know what the use is going to be. If we tried to redo the electric work, that would probably be not smart because someone could come in and steal the copper because there's no tenant there. If we were to do something like the roof, that's probably safer, but it would start depreciating immediately. So, you know, if I was in your position, I would be thinking, not that I'm not trying to do your work, but the logic of us applying for an incentive is that we're trying to reduce the speculative nature of it, or said another way, while it is speculative, there's no danger done to the fund because we're not spending it, right? The moment that we get it and we spent it, there's no way back, there's no other option. We spent $150,000, right? So what we wouldn't want to be is in a position where we spend $150,000 on a piece of the roof or something like that to redo it, particularly knowing that it is properly mothballed, and then it depreciates over, let's say it takes us 3 years, 4 years to get a developer, then you have a several-year-old roof on it. The other problem is cost. If it costed $150,000 to do this, it would probably be cheaper to do it for a developer directly, because the fixed cost of an entire development will be distributed amongst all the things that you have to do. Whereas if we're just doing a roof project or only a window project, then now you're doing all the fixed costs of getting, you know, mobilizing on the site are tagged onto this, you know, relatively minor amount of money. Not to mention that neither the G&E nor the redevelopment authority is a developer per se. So, you know, we're going to have to get a clerk of the works and you know, the proper insurances and whatnot. So that's kind of why we set it up as a developer incentive. We're trying to mimic other programs that in essence are there for when development is ready. Of course, recognizing that in the state programs, it is spread out in a wider audience, so it's less risk on the money just staying there. And we're trying to not spend it without having a project in hand. One of the questions that I know has come up is that we had put forward this proposal for CDBG funding, and there was a timing issue. What was that issue? Up to last year, the city was actually behind on its spending on CDBG. There's 1,000 things that can go wrong or just delay projects, and so those things accumulate. You're not supposed to have more than one and a half times your CDBG allocation in any given year without being spent. So we were significantly behind, and the threat of having the federal government recapture that was real. So it was too risky on that fund. So we backed off of it. I mean, we don't want to be responsible for recapture because it's all, you know, these are all different pots, but ultimately it's the money for the city of Holyoke. So we're still probably going to put that as an option going forward, but the CPA has less of that risk because it's built in as a program where you can continuously roll it over, and you don't have the threat of the federal government doing recapture.
So, Brian, when was the last time someone from HG&E walked through there to make sure the roof wasn't leaking or nobody had broken in or any vandalism had been done?
We actually conducted a tour with Representative Vega a week before Christmas, who was looking at the property. And again, so while we were in there, we took a look around and noticed no new issues.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And just for the record, I think a certain amount of this is coming from our fear that the property was not properly mothballed and that further deterioration would take place, because obviously, you know, we have money that can be used immediately for restoration, and if there were a problem of that kind, you know, if there were a way to get in and make sure that we could hold the property without further damage, you know, I think that was uppermost in our minds. If that is already taken care of, I mean, that's good to know.
Except for the roof, right?
I thought we were just told that the roof was, I mean, while we need a new roof, it's not leaking, it's not.
Okay.
That is correct, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But can it take the weight of snow and, you know, we don't want the roof to fall in, you know, in the meantime.
Yes, yeah, no, it has, we have looked at it, it has handled the past snow loads as well, and it does not, at this time, present a risk.
We were in a similar situation of a building that wasn't, it wasn't as airtight, which was 123 Pine. I know that wasn't the motive of the conversation, but it's a similar situation. And at that one, when we walked it, we were showing it to a prospect, and there was this question of, you know, how bad a shape is it? And we realized that something had happened. The chimney had deteriorated, water had gotten in through the mortar. it seems like one of the pieces of brick fell through, what do you call it? It was like a glass on the ceiling, like a, thank you. Why am I forgetting English at this time of night? And so we made sure that we're covering that. We took the loose chimney bricks and we took it down to a level where it wasn't a threat to the roof. And then in the back, there was a piece of window that was uncovered, so we covered that. That's a little money. I mean, I would never come to the CPA committee for that kind of stuff. I mean, there's other revolving loans and, you know, blight remediation money that, you know, it's not like we're swimming in it, but it's not like it costs tens of thousands of dollars. So we remediate that at the moment because that's much cheaper than waiting till there's a big problem.
Brian, where did, or Marcos, where did you get the $1 million price tag on replacing the roof or repairing the roof?
Back in October, we had a contractor come in and look at what a replacement in kind would be for a slate roof. So he looked at both the train station building and the abutting building as well. So between the two properties, it came in over $1 million.
But that was just one contractor?
That was just one contractor to get an introductory number for the property.
Okay. And what was the scope of that work? Was it replacing timbers also? Was it brand new slate? What kind of?
Brand new slate on the roof. It did not actually cover any timbers.
I have a couple of questions. Do you know what kind of repairs were made to the slate roof? Was it repairs done with slate, or was it more temporary repairs with asphalt shingles? Or
I don't actually have that readily available, so I can't comment on that at this time.
And in the quote, the $1 million quote, was that removing all the existing slate because it was determined that the existing slate wasn't going to last another 30 years, or?
Yes, it was to remove the existing deteriorating slate, and then any visible rot would be remediated at the time as well, when then a new slate roof would be placed over.
Right. And then the third thing I want to say is that while the envelope of a building is probably the first line of defense, some minimum level of heating in the building during winter, like keeping it at 40 degrees, is really important. And I wonder if maybe a mechanical system upgrade, if the roof is already okay, might be something that we could look at. Do you know what the mechanical system is?
The building is temporarily heated, again, kind of around that 40 to 45 degree range.
Temporarily, so
Just like space heaters type deal. We had an issue years ago where the water line into the building broke. So there's no water in the building. It was cut off. So the risk of any pipes inside the building freezing and bursting has been eliminated. But again, just to keep the building at a safe, warm temperature, it is temporarily heated in the wintertime.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions about the, actually, we were concerned about all three developer incentive projects. You mentioned the 123 Pine Street, but, and also the 160 Sargent. We were concerned about, is it Sargent? Wait a minute, let me
The
check.
Armory?
Yeah, 163 Sargent, the Armory, yes. And we had the same concerns about all three projects, about trying to use the funding that we have for actual work to be done, so that it would become obvious that something's being done there, and, that it would be more of an incentive to a developer if they see that money's being put into it. And, I don't know,
Yeah, I think it's also, wanting the public to see that something is being done with,
Yeah,
and it's
you're
with
right.
the Armory, that's an even longer wait, because, it's
Yeah.
pre-development, and
Yeah, and-
more speculative than the other two, so.
If we did consider doing developer incentive speculation like that, I think we would probably put a time limit on it, because we don't want to tie up the funds for forever and not do anything with this money. And like you said, the citizens are going to be looking for stuff to be done. They're not going to be looking for us to sit on money here and not get anything done. So, this was all what our concerns were.
Yeah, that's,
Go ahead, yeah.
sorry.
So ordinarily on a state project, you would, like working for DCAM, there would be a study phase first. So during the study phase, you get a professional to go in, do an assessment of the existing conditions, and then make recommendations, perhaps in the order of importance on what the priorities are for that building. anything similar to that on those 3 properties? Because if we're worried about incentive for developers that may or may not come, and the building's gonna continue to deteriorate in the meanwhile, and it sounds like the train station might be buttoned up a little bit, but then, you know, at least we could then address those things which can prolong the life of the building while conditions change that maybe would improve, you know, the prospects for future development. And rather than just wait, and I don't know what the armory, what is the status of the armory? Is that roof tight? Is that envelope tight?
I can't make a categorical statement on the armory roof, but you know, your question calls attention to a very important point, which is you have to spend money to spend the bigger money, right? And so I understand the speculative nature of it, and I completely agree with what you're saying, which is I would never expect the committee to give a blank check, or not a blank check, a very specific check, but a blank date. And you know, if time comes and then we're close to something at that standpoint, then we can deal with it then. But it's completely reasonable for the committee to not just fork over money forever. The whole point is to preserve options for the future for the committee. That's why I was surprised to learn that, what, you want me to spend it now? It's like, I don't want to spend your money yet. So I don't have, you know, to answer your question more directly, I don't have a very in-depth engineering study for these because it requires money to spend money, and I unfortunately don't have access to that money. There are some smaller things that we have done, for example, for the Richardson Station, and I invite you to look at it if you haven't seen it yet on holyokeredevelopment.com. We have a conceptual reuse study that we commissioned. That was some money we carved out from a federal grant some years ago, back in 2012, to try to inspire reuse. We also commissioned the drawings of the building, so that's one of the things where if a developer wants to do due diligence and cost estimation very early on, the first thing that they have to do is just, all right, do you have drawings for the buildings, and how do I draw this out? So that's some of the money that we spent. And of course, the Genie has spent much more money than that just heating the building in the winters. I had another point I forgot, so I'll stop there.
I guess being in the business and dealing lots of times with buildings that are in varying degrees of decay, one of the most important things to know, because you don't want to throw $1 million at a project, but one of the important things is to prioritize, you know, steps to at least stabilize the building. Would we be able to consider releasing money to get an existing conditions assessment of the building? Because if you did that, you would be able to, they would be soft costs mostly. Mostly it would be, I'm not sure what the procedures would be, but if you identified a professional who would go in, do a full assessment of the building, its envelope, its mechanical systems, you know, then at least we could get a sense of what the recommendations would be to stabilize the building. And I feel like if we don't stabilize the building, another year is going to pass, perhaps 2. We're going to be waiting for a developer. They're not going to come. And then 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now, the roof's going to collapse because we didn't take these preliminary steps, which I could only imagine that a feasibility study would be under, you know, certainly under 6 figures. It probably would be in the mid to high 5 figures. And that would set out a roadmap that would at least get us to the point where the building can be stabilized, because we all know what happens when the buildings are let go and they start to leak or they're not heated, and then the deterioration happens quickly, and then developers don't want a building that's too far gone.
Or they can say that it's already too far gone.
That's right. So commissioning a study, so at least we have the facts, might help us say, you know what, the study says the first step is to do this.
Isn't that sort of what the Armory proposal was? And,
That's exactly what I was going to say, that's really what the Armory I mean, we can use a bunch of different words to kind of use all this, but the pre-development funding that was really intended for the Armory was to sort of look at those specific issues and sort of have consultants come in. So I think the difference with the Armory and the train station is with the Armory we have a partner, whereas with the train station we don't have a specific developer interest. I think the idea, of course, is that the financial incentive would you know, bring a more serious developer to the table. You know, doing a study without having a partner at the table, of course, that's, it's just a different way of looking at the money.
And that's the definite partner that you want to be involved, or?
Well, at this point, it's the only partner interested in being
Okay.
involved.
I was
We've
just
shot the
wondering.
building around for a lot of people. It's attracted more attention than the Richardson station, frankly, because it's slightly bigger, but it's just in a more visible part of town, in an area that has seen a lot of investment and redevelopment. But it has the biggest price tag, so. Yeah, it requires someone that has the appetite to take a project on that's that big. And not that it has to be equity out of pocket for the developer. The concept that we'd be working on would probably receive, we would seek a lot of subsidies. But even doing the analysis for layering of those subsidies requires that analysis and professionals. So it's, part of it is the engineering and architectural analysis that Marco is mentioning. But part of it is, layering the funding. Is the project feasible itself, the tenancy project, not just the reconstruction? And again, that is also speculative, right? Because as you said, it could come back and it's not feasible. And, we recognize this is the first go-around for this committee, and so it's a learning curve for everyone. I remember the point I was going to make earlier, and it fits nicely in here. It is, you have a bunch of applications before you, and at some point you're going to have to make a decision. I respect that. I don't take it personally. If you can't fund these, everything has a trade-off in life, right? We're all adults. We know that we want everything. We can't have everything. As I mentioned to Mike Falsetti and Mimi Panich when we met, getting a no from the CPA committee isn't the end of the world for me. There's a way for you to say no that is helpful to the project. What I am trying to provide to the private sector is the most certainty possible that there is a carrot. And so the best way I can do that is I haven't approved $150,000 or something similar for you to spend now. For many reasons, you may decide that is not doable for you. I will respect that. But if it is articulated in a particular way, right? Like similarly to the eligibility letter, I can waive that and say, if you apply for it, they're just waiting for a developer. They've been waiting for you, right? And so that's less certainty because we would still have to go through that. There's a funding round. Time is money, right? So if I get someone in August and they have to go through the process and wait 6 months, so it's not perfect, but it's better than there's nothing, right? I'm not saying deny it. I'm saying I'm trying to be as transparent here as possible. I'm trying to get this incentive. I have no idea what other applications you have. I probably should. I haven't had time to look through all your portfolio proposals. But if not, I would just ask the committee to make an expression that is as definitive as possible into what it seems like your genuine interest to fund these things so that we can try to move them forward and translate that into certainty for a private developer.
And this ties in very neatly with a question that I was going to ask, which is purely practical and from your point of view. And I think some of what's troubling me, and I probably asked this in our meeting, and I will have to ask it 12 more times before I really understand what I'm being told. But by its nature, at this stage, all of these projects are speculative in the sense that we don't know what will come in. And we don't know whether a final project would actually be fundable by the CPA if it were presented to us, here's the developer, here's what you want to do. Because the rules are kind of arcane. So one question I had about these developer incentives is, from your point of view, would you need to be working with us when it comes to sending out the RPFs to make sure that proposals either conformed to what we could fund under the developer incentives, or else that would-be applicants were on notice that if they couldn't come up with a project that met our requirements, this particular incentive wasn't available? Because, for all I know, there might be something that really doesn't work for CPA, but that would be great for the Armory, and you would want to jump on it. Mm-hmm. And so is that a practical concern?
Yeah, so regularly you know, what we would probably do, not that it's the only way of doing it, but you don't give the incentive up front. You do it on some sort of reimbursement basis, or, you know, you do it in installments, but you're verifying that it does meet the standards. You wouldn't just give
Well,
a
of
check
course
over to
not.
someone.
No, I was thinking more in terms of the project overall. Like if something became community housing, we can fund some community housing projects if the city owns them. And then it turns out that if we aren't acquiring new ones, there are aspects of those projects that we can't fund after all. And, you know, I'm still internalizing all of the rules because this is the first time that we've done this. But I could see a situation where something looked good at the beginning and a developer was interested and would need to know that how you go about this was going to affect whether that 150 would actually be available at the end. And
I think that's a great point because the Armory and 123 Pine Street, they could fall under both the historic rehab and affordable housing. So it's a little confusing in terms of the CPA because then that means that the developer has to know that this would be both, they'd have to have a restriction for the affordable housing as well as for historic. And that's a lot, that could be onerous, so.
So my read of the requirements is that you have to meet a requirement. You don't have to make sure to meet all or multiple
Well,
requirements.
if it is going to be historic rehabilitation, it does have to, there has to be some kind of restriction. There definitely
Right.
does, yeah.
Yeah, so to provide the most certainty upfront possible, we would say that it is for historic rehabilitation, because we wouldn't know, particularly for the Armory and the Richardson Station, there could be a commercial element or there could be a residential element, both or either. And so we would probably be limiting ourselves way too much if we said, well, it's going to be housing.
yeah, that was kind of my concern and just how practically to approach that. And, you know, to your second point, I think the good news from this is we might have some uncertainty because we don't know, you know, we can't know necessarily whether a project will ultimately meet our requirements for funding. But it's very easy, if that is the case, to come back and say, well, you know, you're coming in with a specific project that would clearly be eligible, and they are interested in offering incentives for eligible projects. So even if we can't work our way to do it at this stage when we might not know how to qualify the funds so that we know that we're legal with them, I think that, you know, we could certainly encourage anyone who came forward with, you know, in response to an RPF to apply, or for an application to come in through your office when we knew what was going on with it.
I mean, this would be very similar to say, you know, there's a micro grant program through the Community Development Block Grant funds, right? So you don't know who's going to apply, but there's an intermediary. So the city provides Community Development Block Grant funding to, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce Foundation held the money. So the Chamber of Commerce Foundation, as part of their program, they issue guidelines, and you know, you have to meet certain criteria for, like, you know, income, residency, that kind of stuff. So so it'd be very similar. It would be the onus on the applicant to prove that they meet the program guidelines. So similarly here, it would be onus on the applicant. You know, they're getting free money. So it's a small onus to prove that as you're designing a project, that it will meet the criteria for the CPA, which honestly is not as onerous as, I mean, the process may be onerous, right? But not as much as CDBG in my mind.
Yeah, no, a completely different set of requirements. But yeah, just as long as we're not going to wind up with RPFs that put people off because they're now so limited. And it sounds like that's just not an issue.
Well, I mean, it may be, but you know, they don't. If the limit is that bad, it exists today, right? Like, you could always decide to not use the money, and that's the case that we have today. People have no access to the money.
I mean, if you do historic preservation, isn't that basically just on the outside? We can't do
I think it can be on the inside.
Can we do like kitchens and
Well,
bathrooms? I think
You
that-
can't do kitchen upgrades. I mean, if it was, say, a museum or like, you know, or some historic house that had an old kitchen in it, I would think that But that's different.
Yeah.
The kitchen upgrade is, you know, if,
I'm talking about, say the
That other
Armory
project
is it's gonna be developed, and they wanna make apartments in there, and they wanna put kitchens and bathrooms and all that stuff.
No.
That's not funding we can do. I mean, we can do the
well,
historic,
We can do it under housing.
but can we, yeah, but see, we.
Only
might
if
be
we
able
own
to-
it.
I don't know, can
We could do it under historic rehabilitation. That's the key difference, I think, isn't it, between rehabilitation and preservation?
if it's community housing, rehabilitation can only be done if it's acquired or created with CPA funds. So if it was bought with, you know, CPA funds.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, just to be,
But there's also the preservation category for community housing, which is more like we were talking about before, like protecting the water tightness and the envelope of the building.
Exactly, yeah, that's, yeah. More the
Destruction.
outside, yeah.
Yeah, but that's still not gutting and reconstructing to modern standards.
Existing affordable housing also, isn't it?
Some of it is, and some, well,
So I think the affordable housing would be the easiest to get through some of
yeah, right, rather than historic, yeah, and I don't know.
But the problem is that if it is historic, all the work also has to comply with the historic criteria.
Right,
Which is
exactly.
the U.S., you know, the Secretary of the Interior.
Which is not.
And we
which is
would
not a
have to
modern-
say
yeah.
how long, you know, and how it has to be overseen. And, you know, so there's just a lot to think about with both those layers, is what I'm saying, so.
Right, but it's not a modern kitchen, it's not a modern bathroom. You know, what I'm saying, that isn't historic preservation, is to,
Yeah, you can.
that's
able to
historic
find it.
rehabilitation.
Well, I'm not sure why we're talking about kitchens, I'm sorry.
well,
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm
but-
just
yeah.
saying, you know, what's the best way, what's the best category for these projects?
Well, that's what
Because-
I'm conferring with Stuart Saganor on that, and he has said it is very complicated, and he did bring to my attention that having both those layers to deal with is a lot for, you know, a developer or for a, you know, the owner of the property to have
I
to
wanna-
comply with both things. Is
Yeah, I want them to come in under the right, you know, project category. I mean, you know, the right category, so they can get the best funding for, you know, the best, so we can do something for them. In other words, if they come in under historic and they want stuff done that we can't do for them, then they're, you know, under historic. That's my only point. It's not anything, I just want to get that clarified, that's all.
You know, I think that they can come in under historic, because as an incentive program right now, that's how they're applying for this particular CPA funding.
well, I think it was both for some of them. It was under both.
But in the
categories.
future, they can change it up, they can come in differently. It's project by project, so under this project, what they're looking for is to just shore up some buildings, which is how they're coming in at this point.
But it has to comply with both
Right.
things, so that's.
So it seems to comply to me.
But I mean, with the Armory, I guess in a way you don't, well, that developer, Mike Moriarty, he wants to make it affordable housing, but maybe he's not sure, I don't know, so.
Well, it's feasibility for, what is he calling
That
it?
Senior veteran housing.
Senior veteran housing. Just to go back to another point, so the Chestnut
But I
Park
guess that would be creation, so that could fall under the creation, community housing creation. So, sorry, I'm just thinking about the law, but go ahead.
So my understanding is that you can, and if I'm wrong, this is a great forum for me to be corrected, that we could fit a project uniquely within the historic preservation or rehabilitation category without going into whether it's housing or not. And so our proposal was geared towards simplifying whether it was both or not by just saying categorically, because you have to fill buckets, right? You have to spend at least 10% of your budget.
We
on
don't
one of-
actually have to spend at least 10%. It can be whatever. It's just that 10%
no
is
minimum?
reserved in each category.
We have to designate 10% of our
Right,
budget.
I stand corrected. Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Reserve every year
Right.
for a category.
Right.
So understanding that you need to, budget yourself. We didn't want to add another layer of speculation as to whether we were doing housing or historic or whatever. We're just coming, if we can do merely the historic bucket, that's what we're looking to do. for simplicity's sake, particularly because in the case of the Richardson Station, it could be either or both. As far as the historic preservation and like updating kitchens and stuff like that, the only thing I could offer, which may be a pretty good example, is that the Chestnut Park Apartments, those have modern kitchens, even in the old elementary school. Is that the Whiting Elementary School? I forget what the name was. So I mean, totally, that got a bunch of historic tax credits and followed the national parks or the Department of Interior's standards.
I'm not saying they can't get the funding for it, but maybe not from us. That's all I'm saying.
I know
Well, if they could use my point is, if they could use historic tax credits under the same restrictions, or the most strict restrictions of historic preservation, because they're even restricted on how they could, for example, rehabilitate the ceiling in some areas, quite interestingly enough. But they were able to, put modern bathrooms in, because you have to meet code.
I know what you're referring to. There is something, though, about how you can't upgrade kitchens, and I can't remember where I saw it, but I know it's true, and I think
Like using our money.
Let's
It may
stop.
be
Okay.
Let's stop with
Okay.
let's throw the word kitchen out the window with the kitchen sink. It's the differences between preservation and rehabilitation. There's a huge difference, I believe, between the two. When you get into preservation, you get into all kinds of very expensive, restrictive, and nasty requirements. Rehabilitation, there's a lot more leeway, and it falls more on the local historic commission and what's allowed, and you can design your own standards and criteria on that kind of stuff. It's a lot less restrictive on the rehabilitation, on historic rehabilitation. Okay. All right? And just to be clear on the train station, we weren't saying we want you to spend the money. We just wanted to take a look at if there was some way to incentivize someone by doing something to the building that would also serve the purpose of protecting it from further damage or deterioration. Just a physical incentive as well as financial, and that, for me, that question's been answered. That's been done. Thank you, that's great. I've got, as far as that goes, then I've got no problem at all making funds available to attract someone in. The question I would have is, what kind of restrictions would we want to, like we said about, rehabilitation? And an example I would give is, you've got a H.H. Richardson train station down in Newton. That's a pizza place. We've got one up in Northampton. It's not an H.H. Richardson, but it's a historic looking, very similar looking, that's a bar and a restaurant. So if this is available, the funds are available for someone, and we say it's because of the facade or certain looks and stuff like that, are we going to be able to, or should we be able to say, okay, you can put a pizza place in, or you can put a high-end restaurant in, but what if it's AutoZone that came along? Okay, we're going to do that nice facade work, and we're going to put that nice slate roof on it, but it's going to be an AutoZone. I don't think anybody's going to want that. So how do we, you know what I'm saying? How do you, now you've put the 150 out, how can you say no to one developer and yes to another?
I don't think that's our choice. We have a simple CP8 project that's coming before us. Who they sell to or how it gets developed that's not our call.
Well, then so be it. I just wanted to get that out on the table. Once we do this, is that the answer, Mark? Once the 150's out there.
And actually, I did ask that question of Stuart Sagan, and he said, yeah, we can't really control what the developer ends up doing with it.
All right, so we got.
But of course, there could be a historic restriction, on changing, demolishing, or whatever the work being done.
Right.
But we can't determine, say, for example, the Richardson station, whether it becomes some kind of brewery or whatever, there's no way to.
What's the zoning?
It's downtown residential. So
So they wouldn't be able to, yeah. They could change it, yeah, right, but
the committee can put,
easy.
But you wouldn't be able to put a restaurant in there or a bar or anything either. That's a good point, Marcos, maybe. And changing it to IG, you know, all that really allows for, the only thing we've allowed for an IG now is marijuana dispensaries. You know, can a restaurant go into an IG without a variance, zoning variance?
the IG is the most permissible zone in the city. So offhand, I would bet yes, that it can. So yes, rezoning, as Brian indicated, would probably go a long way towards the preservation of the building. Mike, as you just mentioned, you know, you mentioned cannabis. The market is very hot on that, and that may be a possibility. Of course, that's a different forum. In terms of the use, I would say, in my opinion, yes, that would be accurate. There's different sets of decisions. This body has broad leeway, I would say, in setting requirements for meeting its mission, right? So if it's historic rehabilitation and the mission is making sure that it looks historic and that it's preserved for future generations, that those restrictions can be there. So that if it were, say, the hypothetical auto zone, or, you know, fill in the blank, whatever use you find obnoxious, that they're not putting a giant billboard on top of the new $1 million slate roof, right? And that would be completely legitimate because you're trying to preserve your goal. You know, deciding use is not a power given by legislation to this committee. So, you know, if you felt very strongly that abortion clinic should not go in there, that is not within the purview of the committee. As long as it's a historic train station looking abortion clinic in this example.
Would you be willing to consider, if we wanted to do what Marco had suggested about doing a feasibility study? Is that the right term, Marco, or what would you call that?
I would have said an existing building assessment, facility assessment.
Is that something that, you know?
I agree with Marco as far as some other buildings, but I don't think for the train station. I think there's been enough assessment. We've got the study done by UMass. Is that the same one that you're referencing right there, the UMass study?
Yeah, the Center for Design and Engagement. Yep.
Because I believe they had structural people in there already.
There wasn't a structural study, but I'm not privy to every study that the Genie has done to the building, and they've put in more money than I ever had on that. So.
Kevin?
I was actually planning on looking to see what studies had been completed in the past, and unfortunately, I did not have the file accessible at the time, so I don't know the full extent of the previous studies right now.
Okay, well, you know, that's something we can talk about on our own and see if that's something that we want to ask them to come back. And now that's a question that we might have, Amy, and we might have to look into if we can do that, if they come in with, you know, they came in with their project goals and their application, can we turn around and say to them, okay, well, we'll consider it, but we want you to do a building assessment before we want to put the money aside, or whether we put it aside or use it for the building. Can we do that? Can we come back to them and ask them to do that?
I mean, I think we could decide to fund a building assessment. That could be, something that we could, the committee could do.
Outside of outside of the applications you're talking about, us?
Yeah, there's nothing required even about having, not every community even requires applications. It's, just this is sort of the format that most communities use, but sometimes the committee themselves come up with proposals. So, I mean, I think things can be renegotiated, and what matters is what's actually in the contract, what you decide.
Well, I don't mean after the contract. I mean now in this stage here where we're going forward, if we wanted to ask them to do that, if that's okay if we do that.
I think so.
Yes, okay.
Can we ask HG&E to provide us with those studies? Because one of the last things we would want to do is award funds to do work that's done on top of something that is in jeopardy. Like if no structural survey was done,
Yeah, right,
and
exactly.
it's determined that there's some major structural defect somewhere, and then you do all this work, and then something caves in, like that would be a problem.
Yeah.
We will have spent money on something without doing the groundwork to make sure that it was, that those funds were invested appropriately, you know, knowing that it's on top of a solid foundation.
Right.
Well, I can help with that. We don't need to spend a lot on a structural assessment there. The main beams and the walls and the foundation of that building are sound. Okay, it's the roof decking that holds the slate shingles on. And more than anything, what deteriorates is the actual nails themselves, more than anything else, rot away and allow the shingles to slide out.
Which building?
The train
Train
station.
station, yeah.
So as far, you know, the main carrying beams are all in very, very, very good shape. So it's, I don't want to drag up bad memories, but it's very similar to what went on with the church over here at Mater Dolorosa. There's checking, there is some checking, which is not a structural problem. It's a natural property with the wood, and it's very, very common, and they can continue to check for another 500 years, and it won't cause any problems. It would be just the roof decking itself. The rest of it, that's granite. It's not brick. We're not looking at facades falling apart. There are not a lot of issues there.
So on that building, we happen to have your expertise. On other buildings, we may not know, and so that's where an assessment would be helpful, because it would outline, like, I would have gone directly to the executive summary, which would have said, the building is in such and such condition, these are the, you know, the items that are deteriorated, or here is a list of items that need to be addressed, and that way we would know, because it might even prioritize. It might even prioritize the list of items to address first, and that might be a roadmap for us, you know, to then say, well, let's follow this roadmap rather than awarding money to do work that might rely on some other thing being in place first.
So now you're considering the idea of, you know, maybe awarding money for an assessment like this for the other two
Considering
ones,
it.
Armory and 123, and then deciding next whether to. So the only thing is, I don't know, it's just, that still may not lead to anything, but it is maybe what needs to be done. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's how the state does work.
Yeah.
When they decide to work on a building, they don't just throw money and say, put a new roof on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they want an assessment so they
Right.
can understand the full scope of work that needs to be done, and then they might choose.
Are there any other ways that you can get an assessment, like any other sources of funding for that kind of thing? Besides,
Well, I mean, you can, when the opportunity is good, the developer in their due diligence phase will do that. But when the opportunity is marginal, to be kind, then, you know, what's the risk reward? If I know that I'm going to spend X amount of thousands of dollars, and the likelihood is high that it will tell me that this is a money pit, then, and I'm just going to decide, no, I'm not going to do anything, then you can't get someone else to do the work for you. And then there's multiple levels in which you can do it, right? So you can do the bare bones, you know, is this going to fall right now? Are the beams okay? That's one layer. But when you're rehabbing, there's a bunch of building code issues that you may want to be conscious of, right? So like if it's residential, it's going to be more important for you to understand the wind load capabilities of the building, because then you may be required to put a cross beam and essentially build a metal structure inside the brick. And that's a lot more expensive than something else, right? And so if we know, you know, that's more like engineering analysis, not just looking at is it going to fall down, but looking at a couple of code issues, ADA access, right? Like you look at your main egresses to the building, other safety considerations, right? The H.H. Richardson Station is right next to a train track. How do you deal with that in an aesthetically pleasing way that, you know, you're not putting up barbed wire 10 feet, but also you don't want people to get hit by the train. There's other stuff that's not the building, you know, maybe the site. These are questions that I don't expect you to have an answer for, but the Richardson Station actually sits kind of like on top of a hill, and it has very beautiful masonry around it. You know, someone's going to have to deal with that. You have historically there used to be stairs around there. It's it's likely that for building code purposes, you may not be able to reconstruct that because that wouldn't be ADA accessible. So maybe that never gets done, but it gets patched up, that is fixed, and then you have, say, a garden there or something like that. I'm just coming up with this now because, you know, the committee is telling us think creatively. So, like, I'm telling you train of thought.
And so the train is active there, right, those tracks? by the
Yes,
station?
yes,
They
as of
don't use that
2015.
station.
Right, they don't use the station. Okay.
Yes. So there are a series of considerations in the analysis that we can go. I would call that bucket kind of the pre-development bucket. And so if the committee is more comfortable with pre-development, hallelujah. I mean we getting pre-development money is difficult. Usually there's a lot of funding streams, tax credits that you can get, MassWorks money that you can get for the hard money, but you usually have to spend a couple $100,000 before you can get there. And so when you're in the beginning, it's always speculative because you have to be able to envision a project without anything having happened yet.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions?
I think this conversation makes me think that we should also go back to considering the developer incentive idea as well, you know?
Oh, yes.
The original
Yeah,
idea.
we're not
yeah.
making any decisions.
Because of the conversation we're having, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that was the point of doing this, I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, that's what we're doing, is just getting information here that's gonna help us make a decision eventually in what direction we're gonna go. So, yeah, we appreciate that. So, any other questions at this point in time? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming in.
Thank you.
Really
Thanks for having us.
appreciate it. Yes, thank you. Okay, let's see here where we are on the agenda. Do you have to get going pretty soon, Andrew?
I'm good for a few.
Okay. All right. Yes, we'll go back to the items on the agenda now. We will take up item 2, which is acceptance of a treasurer's report, and actually an update and then acceptance or whatever.
Okay, so, since the December meeting you guys last had, I've met with Amy twice. And today, we actually met with the city auditor's office and the tax collector's office. So we are just coordinating going forward a streamlined way to report and monitor this. Amy has access in the Munis system to actually pull our stuff real time. And we also discussed ways that we will disperse funds when that becomes time. So I think we've made some leeway on our coordination with the various departments. So the one thing, so the only expenses that we've had is in the administrative budget. It's a $29,000 budget, give or take, and we're, you know, a third of the way through there, which puts us on track to what we've been saying the whole time. Her hours have been fine for now, and I think that she can continue on the 30-hour-a-week pace through April, May with no problem. We have to get to June 30th. The thing that I'm a little worried about is I have not seen any expenses for Ryan's hours.
Right, right. And I told him to get in touch with you and give you that. I know I've signed timesheets for him since July 1st, but they've been 2-3 hours a week.
Okay.
So what are we up to here, half the year?
So that would still put us on, as long as it's nothing like there's 300 of hours we owe him or anything, then I'm not worried about it.
No, we're up to his hours that he's already put the timesheets in for, which the last ones I signed from were right before the holidays,
So none of those expenses have shown up on our side. have they?
They should, because if I'm signing them, he should be
Well, they
turning them
haven't.
in.
I'm just telling you, they're not on the report from the tax collector.
So what is he's not turning the timesheets in?
I don't know. So that's what I want to
Doesn't make
look
sense,
into.
yeah. He's got to have gotten paid since July 1st. He's got to have gotten some pay.
He's gotten $5,000 for last year since
Well,
then.
that was, yeah, right.
But there's been
exactly.
nothing additional. Everything
nothing
additional has been Amy.
What is he doing? And I don't understand.
I don't know. I'm working with Kate, and we're gonna set up another meeting between this and the next meeting to go over the Munis part, and hopefully I can get to the bottom of that. I saw Ryan somewhere, and I did talk to him a bit about it, but he said He was working on it.
Okay, so yeah, I signed time sheets from up to sometime in December.
But given the amount of time that I'm assuming he's worked, I still think we are within a reasonable budget. And when we get to that June 30th time, going forward, we're going to be much better off because we're not going to have to pay for 2 years of administrative assistance
Exactly.
in 1 year.
Right.
Which has been our big burden this year.
Yes, yes. And so do you don't have any figures for us tonight as to,
I left my paper with the auditor, but, I had some updated ones from this. We've spent $8,000 this year of our 29,000, but I think there's more cost out there.
Yeah.
That's what I was cautioning. But I don't think it's not beyond the burn rate, which will bring us through the year at this
Okay.
point.
all right, okay. Do you think that you could ask, I don't know why I'm losing my voice here, but do you think you could ask Katie, I had a couple questions from some constituents, they're not my constituents, but people in the public, about how they're taking out the fee from the taxes. And only because they thought, last year they paid a certain amount. Like, I'll use myself for an example. I paid like $27 for the first year of,
Right.
yeah. So this year, I didn't notice if they took, I don't think they're taking it out every quarter. That's my concern. I think they're doing it maybe twice. And so people are getting concerned because they're getting a double,
I think
amount.
we may, they may not be breaking it out on the tax bill, but I think it's
they
quarterly.
did in the last one.
They did
They
say that
did
today.
say they were gonna do it quarterly, because I don't think the first tax bill of this fiscal year had it, but the second one that we just got did. And I
So
think it was two.
our understanding that it's quarterly, but I can confirm.
Yeah, see if you can find out.
the dates,
Yeah.
for the, that they send the bills out, so that's strange.
Yeah,
So it might be that they didn't have it on one of the bills and that's causing confusion,
okay.
but we can get that.
Well, the problem is, here's the confusion. The person who spoke to, a couple of people who spoke to me about this is we just got a tax bill.
Yeah.
And the amount that's on the tax bill for the fee, for the surcharge for our community preservation was more than what they paid all of last year. So they don't understand why they're paying more. And so I had a lot of thoughts go through my head. I'm there, well, are they taking out the 100,000 because it's after 100,000 that they start assessing the fee? So I hope they're remembering to do that. I mean, this isn't even,
Can you say that again? What happened?
everybody's assessment for their house.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, say it's assessed at 2,500.
You charge more?
200, no.
Okay, sorry.
200, say your house is assessed at 250,000.
Okay.
For CPA surcharge
Right.
reasons, they take off the first 100,000, that's in the law, so you're only paying the surcharge on
see.
the 150. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my understanding anyway, is that how it works? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Were deductions made all 4 quarters?
The first year it was all out of one bill.
Yeah.
This year, it's supposed to be every quarter, a quarter of our overall.
right,
There might have been a discrepancy between the first year and, now that we're in a regular rhythm, maybe it's
Yeah.
this is
But
more
it's a
accurate.
conversation that we can have with the tax collector. and see
yeah,
what's
the
going on.
tax collector and the assessors, because they're the ones that determine
Right.
what the amount is supposed to be assessed on.
Just so I'm clear, what was the first year of tax collections for this?
2018.
Okay, all right. Even
Fiscal
though
year.
the ordinance happened in like 2016, didn't it?
This is our second tax year.
Yeah,
Because one's done on
yeah,
one's done on a fiscal basis, the other's done on a calendar basis.
yeah.
And then we were late getting the tax bills out, so you got a double in fiscal 18.
We
You
got
got a
one.
double bill.
We got more than
Yeah.
double. We got,
All in one.
the whole amount was taken out in one bill, because it was one
So
year.
now, everything went through and the tax bills went out and everything's back to a regular quarterly basis now.
Which this is our second tax year with the surcharge.
Right.
And we just got our second tax bill.
Third. No. I will, I can talk to them on that.
Yeah, if you could. I mean, and you don't even have to wait till the next meeting, you can just let me know so I can let these people know.
I think we
yeah.
should also find out about the timesheets from Ryan,
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
so that we have accurate, you know, budget, to balance the budget, yeah.
Okay, do you want to check with him, or do you want me to check with him?
I'll check with him. I've already started talking to him about it.
Okay. All right, so is there any other questions for Andrew about budgeting or anything? Okay. We don't have a report, so we don't have to do any motions.
Okay.
Okay, so.
I just wanted to mention that I know Kip was asking you, Elaine, if we could create some kind of chart that showed, you know, the request amounts from the different applicants and kind of comparing that to the money that we have. And so we're going to be working on something along those lines, yeah.
And then that reminds me, one more point. Today, the auditor, they mentioned that we might want to run through a small proposal, like say the gas lights, through the process to kind of work out the kinks of how it's going to work here, because we can do some things out of cycle. And I thought it was a good idea that we could discuss.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
The annex lanterns.
Yeah.
Do we have to do a public hearing on that, though?
Yeah, I think everything.
I think we have to wait till the public hearing, and then we could do it quickly right after that.
Yeah, I mean, the point wasn't immediate, but just to do it first, to pave the way for the bigger stuff that we're gonna work on.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay, I have to go though, so excuse me.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Andrew.
We're not going to be here for the dates, but that we're going to be.
Yeah, that's,
But maybe I can.
Just let me know. Yeah.
What?
Know me and-
Okay, I hope you can come on those dates.
yeah, well, that's the thing, you know, we,
Days that you are usually, like especially for
I'm better,
February.
Thursdays are kind of tough. If we can, Monday, Tuesday, it works best for me.
Yeah, me too.
I have my son I have to go pick up right now, so,
okay.
but
What
usually,
about Fridays? I know people don't like Fridays.
I could do a Friday,
Okay,
yeah, but.
okay, thanks,
Bye-bye.
thanks.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
And
Okay.
say, on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, you're definitely gonna lose me.
On Mondays.
Yep.
So I think we have
But
to.
don't worry about my vote, because I do get another bite at the apple
That's true.
on Tuesdays, so.
Well, but Amy
We
can't
move
do
on to
Mondays
that?
now.
Yeah, I can't do Mondays. Can we move on to that on the agenda then?
Yeah,
Because there's a
let's see, what are we up
specific
to
list
here?
of things.
That's the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, the list of dates.
Item 4.
And so I'd like to go through the different things that we need to accomplish and try to fix a date for when we're going to meet. So the first one is a meeting to review the applicant responses, because I just sent those off, like the questions to each of the applicants. And I also have, I can give you, this is sort of more for us than the way I presented the questions in the emails, but I made this up for each of you. You can take one and pass it. So you can have an idea of like what I know or what kind of questions I've asked the applicants, but they're supposed to respond.
Thank you.
The 22nd.
Yeah, the 22nd. So I had put down maybe we could meet on the 24th, but I think that is, that's a Thursday, and I can't do Mondays, so that's why the other options are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. So that's the first date I'd like to figure out with you.
Well, I have a problem with Tuesdays.
Okay.
You know, we have planning board meetings then, and, you know, if we don't get too busy, would be able to do alternate Tuesdays probably, but I don't know how bad our calendar is going to be. We do add on extra meetings when we need to.
Do you meet the same nights as the city council?
Yes,
Okay,
and the same nights as the ordinance committee from time to time.
so that's pretty much that.
How did,
Yeah, I mean, we
All
work,
month.
we've got,
how was Wednesdays for everybody? How did we do on?
Wednesday would work for me, and so would, for me, any day is fine except Monday.
The only thing about Wednesday, I can't be here till 6:45. We wouldn't start our
Well, what
meeting
about Friday?
6:45.
Friday could be tough.
Well, this is just one of many dates that we have to,
If it's, yeah. I
no,
can
there's
go.
many different dates that we have to fit in, so,
So what's the date on
Well,
that
is-
Friday?
On the Friday, that's the 25th.
Yeah, I would have to
It'd
double
normally be
check
good.
that.
I'm gonna be in South Carolina, but on my way home. I don't know if I'll be home by then. Everybody else will be here.
I mean,
Do you want to do that then?
what, meet on Friday?
No, it's not, this is not going to be a regular, I'm trying to pin
Yes,
down
for
like
that-
several different dates right now.
Yes,
And
that's right.
so this would be our
So you're looking
Our
for it
next
to be
one.
Friday, a
Yeah.
Friday? Okay,
January 25th.
okay, well, is it all right with everybody that's here, at least? We can,
Probably. I have a nasty suspicion that I've got something that isn't written down for that Friday. I would be okay with that Wednesday.
well, the thing is, that it's gonna start to get lighter out, so if we have to meet at 6:45, you know,
That's true, too.
Okay,
we could do Wednesday,
do you want to do that?
6:45.
Okay. So 6:45 on Wednesday?
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
And that's the 23rd?
That's the 23rd.
and that would be to meet with, that would be to meet with some more of the applicants.
Well, no, this is to discuss their responses to the questions. I'll have gotten their responses.
To the
I
question.
mean, if you want to add on, you know, that we invite somebody to, you know, come then and start doing that. But what I had here in the email was then the next week, we would schedule meetings with applicants after we have time to absorb the information they've given us, right? Because some of them, like the Victory Theater, there's like a huge list of things that we're asking for, and there's, you know, financial reports and all kinds of things. It's going to be hard for me in a way to absorb everything for the 23rd, to be honest, to be able to
Yeah,
make
depending
sure
on
that
how much we've asked, you know, that may have to be 2 meetings just to review.
Well, because some applicants, there's not as many questions, you know, like for Kestrel or whatever, but for others, there's a lot of questions. So, yeah.
Yeah,
it
there's
could.
a couple
Maybe we
of
should
them.
meet twice that week, you know, just to discuss
Well,
the
okay,
responses.
maybe we can meet on the 23rd and see how far we get, and if we can't get through all of the projects on the 23rd, we can try to schedule something for the 25th.
Yeah, I can certainly pencil that in. I'm not, you know, I'm only semi-concerned. It's not like I know that there's something that I've got to
A
conflict
couple of
with.
the projects are pretty straightforward. We can, you know, just,
As I'm
go
thinking
through 'em,
about
but
this,
then
I'm
there's
worried
others.
that I'm not going to be able to get through everything to be able to kind of condense the information the very next day to everybody, because I'm just thinking about it now.
well, no, you wouldn't have to do that for the next day. We're gonna be taking up different projects, so it won't be, you know, we'll do what we can on the 23rd, and then on the 25th, we'll finish up
Okay,
whatever
so
we
let's make the
didn't.
25th a definite date then.
If
what I'm
we
saying.
need it, yes.
I think we will need it because we
Okay.
won't have all the answers from the Victory Theater. Remember that?
Okay.
So, and they are a big one. They're a doozy. I mean, or I didn't mean to say that, but there's a lot. There's just a lot.
Complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's complicated. So that's why, and oh, actually, you know what? I wonder what time they're going to send me the answers on 25th, because I think some of the things,
On the 22nd.
no, but
No, because this
Yeah,
is
we-
my
we have to
fault. I
explain
went
this.
through the full application after we saw their presentation on Tuesday night. And, you know, my hope had been that that presentation would get rid of a lot of my questions. And instead, it sort of added to some things that I thought we ought to know before we can really consider what they're asking for. And it's an immensely complicated project, as everybody knows. But you read through their full application, which we didn't see in paper form, but it's on our Google Drive. And the details do raise a bunch of questions.
I just
So-
realized that I might have a conflict on the 25th. I'm just realizing that. Wait, let me just look at my schedule to see that.
A bunch of busy people here.
I know.
Yeah, I forgot.
Mike, you and I are supposed to.
It's actually a work con.
And I don't know much about it. Like, is there something that maybe you and I, excuse me, can do?
I'm just looking at the questions that are out here already on MIFA.
Can we
Not
finish?
sure where the first, Mimi's got a bunch of really, really good ones, and then there's a batch before it also.
Yeah, that's because we sent out part one questions, And because of what Mimi was saying, there was this planning board where they were going to appear, so I knew there was more questions coming, but I didn't want to hold up giving the first set of questions so that they would have more time to work on them. So I just sent out the part 2 questions that she came up with.
Yeah, we warned them
Okay.
and then we did
I
it
don't
in
I
2
don't know about
waves.
you, Marco, but I'm really happy with this list of questions, and I'm fine to sit back and wait to see how they answer these.
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm reading them right now. These look like very good questions.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so somebody did our work for us. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was really interesting to get in there and see, because they've got a lot of really good information. They obviously hired great people to do their site plan review, and they came up with useful information for us buried in the middle of this application. But of course, now we need clarification because,
Raises more questions.
Well, you know
Yes.
what, I think I'll be okay with the 25th. It's just, what time would we be starting? Would we be starting at 6?
We could start at 6 on Friday.
The only thing is I would have to be somewhere at 8 o'clock, so,
We'll just have
Stop
to
at
be done.
7:30.
okay. All right,
well, we just have to really make sure that we read all of the question responses ahead of time so we can be efficient.
yeah, that would really help if everybody did read over what I sent, and then we come in kind of prepared. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Because then you would have to do a whole lot less condensation and presenting.
Okay, so did everybody mark down those first 2 dates?
Yep.
Okay, and then the next week, we want to start having meetings. Oh, sorry.
I have 125, and what was the other
And
date?
the first one is, the
23.
next one is the 23rd.
Yeah, at 6:45.
Yeah, that's the later one.
And what day is the 23rd?
Or
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Okay, the 23rd, all right. 6:45, CPA. 25th.
And the Friday one's gonna be at what time?
6 PM.
Okay, do we need to go farther than that at
Yeah,
this point?
as I said, there's a lot of dates I
Okay.
want to, yeah. So the next week, we want to schedule meetings with applicants, and I need to be able to tell them, ahead of time when to come. So that's January, the week of, the 28th, and again, I can't do Monday evening, so,
We'll probably have to do the 30th at 6:45.
does that sound good to everybody?
January 30th?
It's a Wednesday.
But we'll probably need more than one time, because we
Yes.
have a lot of people to meet with. So again, should
Well,
we
we already
do?
met with Marco, so we don't have to do those 3 again, I don't think, unless something else comes up. So you can take those 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then there's still 9
right.
different applicants. Although some of them are, like Olivia Moselle, she's the one who pretty much put together all the ones for the stained glass, the annex, and the Smith Ferry Cemetery.
We should just have her one night for all 3 projects.
Yes.
Well, but I think that Mike McManus should also be there, since he's the actual person on the
Yes.
applicant, and, he's on the application, so I think we'll need at least 2 meetings that week. 2 meeting times, and to maybe try to book more than one, book a bunch of people for each of them. I guess
Okay.
4 to 5 people, if we
All
can
right, so
get through it.
So the Friday again would be the 2nd of
No, it's
February.
February 1st.
Friday would be February 1st.
Yeah, so are we again saying 6:45 on Wednesday,
6:45 the 30th.
on January 30th?
Mhm.
And then 6 PM on February 1st.
First, yeah.
Okay. Hopefully that's enough for, I don't know if those will be long meetings. And again, I may have to leave early on the Friday one, but
Can we go to the following week?
let's see. Yeah, we could go into the following week.
The other Wednesday?
The public community meetings are supposed to start on February 5th. But yeah, so that's the problem. But maybe, I don't know, maybe, no, we can't do that.
Well, do we,
Explain to me what the,
So where they get to present, the applicants get to present to the public, a public hearing, like maybe, I don't know, is there a way that they could even do a PowerPoint? Do we have a,
they could if they have it.
or it might be held somewhere else, like you were talking about the senior center.
Yeah,
or-
have it at the senior center, and of course we have to, Ryan knows how to do this. We have to post it in the newspapers. I mean, it has to be a legal,
Yeah.
this has to be a legal meeting.
Once again, this is something that can be done in the annex fourth floor conference room.
And I don't think we
We've
have to
got
do
a
it
smart
early in
board and
February. We
everything.
can do it later in February, that public meeting. Why would we have to do it
Well, because
early?
then on the 14th, around that time, I wanted to have us discuss, or have you discuss some complete recommendations on projects, or, you know, plan some times to begin that, because then there has to be a drafted recommendations, from what I understand, for the mayor. That has to come soon after, and then the orders have to be, you have to finalize the council orders on March 7th. So it comes up very quickly, you
Right,
know.
so I would suggest that we do the public hearing the week of February, you know, between the 10th and the 16th.
Okay, so let's,
That
so then let's look at the week of the 4th for another meeting on the, to meet with the applicants, like we were just talking about. Should we say Wednesday, the 6th
Yeah,
of February? Okay.
At 6:45.
yeah. And then, and also, at the end of that meeting, we should, well, we can't wait till then. We have to start planning the public hearing. We would have to start planning it the 1st
Okay.
of February.
Well, it doesn't have to be 2 weeks in advance, the notice you said has to
Right.
be. So it might even have to be earlier than that if the first meeting, say, is on, is the idea of the public hearing that we're going to be hosting it?
We're gonna be hosting it, but we're facilitating it.
Okay,
That's a better word, because what we're gonna do is invite the public, invite all the applicants, and they're gonna be presenting to the
so
public.
the committee will
Public
attend
can
that?
ask questions. What's that?
The committee will attend?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I mean, I've clearly gotten confused somewhere along the line. What do you mean by hosting it? Because this is our public hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, of course,
Yeah,
we are the body that is hearing the applicants and the public response to them. We're running these hearings.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if it's just going to be me alone, you know, sort of introducing the applicants to the public, or,
We
you
would
know,
be there.
how it's going to be set up,
As
you know,
many
and
of
if
us
the
that
committee
can
will,
be there,
okay.
we'll be there, yeah.
All right, so
The
then,
way that public hearings are normally held, as Councilor Sullivan can attest, is the entire body that is holding the public hearing is involved. I mean, you're not running these, we're running these. You know, the chair will normally ask people to present and run the meeting.
oh,
and-
okay, so it'll be just sort of like this format, and you'll be
Yeah.
calling them up to talk to the public, or to
Yes.
talk to you as the
Yeah.
public
Well,
listens?
the important piece is that the public gets a chance to express their opinion.
Yes.
All right,
Yes,
that's-
and ask
that's-
questions.
So there's a chance that, we don't know how many people will really show up from the public, but we just hope that they show up. Okay.
Yeah, and I suspect at least some will. I know there was some interest in people attending tonight's hearing because they thought that possibly some of the developer incentives were up, and people, you know, really care about, for instance, the train station. And, you know, I clarified to the people who reached out to me that what was going on tonight was really more about technical details about how developer incentives worked. And, you know, by all means, come on down if they had questions, if they had information for us. But I think those very same people will certainly show up for the public hearings. And, you know, we won't know how long those take. They can go on a while or they can be very brief. If you're curious, I
So-
can send you a link just to watch outtakes of
Yeah.
any, so you
I'd
can
like to
see how they
that.
run.
So will the committee be asking questions too?
No.
Okay.
Well, we can if,
Well, I
Okay.
suppose we can, yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, we're not the main reason for that meeting.
yeah.
Okay,
We
so
can
we have to
all- yeah.
figure out how to, do you think one public hearing date is enough for all 12?
Lord, no.
What?
I think it would be nice, and we can try, but I would be shocked if we could get them
Well,
all in
that's
one
what I
public hearing
thought.
date.
I know you were saying, Elaine, you'd like to do it in one
Well,
evening.
only because I don't think people will come to the second one, you know, it's like, if we can get them there for the first one, we'll be lucky.
I agree. I really,
one is great.
I think,
Yeah.
Okay, so how much
I'd
time?
love to have a bunch of them, but,
Should give time limitations per
Right.
So-
presentation. Maybe,
Right.
maybe say we expect to be there 3 hours, we have 12 people.
Well, except This, to be continued and discussed more fully as the time approaches, but there's actually some legal guidance that's come out relatively recently about the role of public hearings in lawmaking in Massachusetts, or grant making, or anything. And one of the things that has been emphasized in our courts is that the point is for the public to be heard, and you cannot unreasonably restrict time. If people have substantive things that they want to say, we can't just say, okay, you get a minute each, this entire thing gets 15 minutes because we've got 12 people to go, or 12 presentations to go through. We may get lucky, and people may not need any more time than that. But if,
Make a suggestion that because we have 12 people, if they could,
yeah, I mean, we can certainly,
reasonable as possible?
yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that, and we can, as I understand it, make sure that it isn't redundant, long speeches.
Right.
But if people have real complicated questions or presentations they want to make, if they go over the time that we have scheduled, I think we have to either at that point say, all right, we wanted to at least hear from everybody this session, so we are continuing the public hearing as to, Richardson train station application to this predetermined date. We can certainly do it that way. But that we need to be really careful about not just doing bang, bang, bang.
So I think that we should schedule a second tentative date if it does end up turning out that there isn't enough time to go through because people have a lot of questions. Does that make sense to you?
Makes sense to me.
In the advertisement, can you say these 6 projects are gonna be presented this date, the next 6, the next date?
Yes.
Maybe we can separate the 2 biggest ones, one date, one the other.
Yeah, we can do
Oh, well,
that.
then in that case, we'll definitely have 2 dates, and that might be better than leaving it up to chance, because it's more chance, then there'll really be enough time.
Yeah, because, what I'm thinking about is, for instance, the ordinance committees or the planning board's public hearing notices. We'll have a public hearing notice that, and you have to, for us, do one for each applicant because it's a separate public hearing. But we'll schedule like 4 of them a night and put, 4 public hearings on. And
It has to be more than 4 if there's only 2 nights.
yeah, well, this is just like what I have seen.
Uh-huh.
There's no reason that we can't do
Okay.
all of them at once. Or one thing I would check with legal, I don't know the answer to this, is whether it has to be a separate public hearing for each application,
Oh, no,
just as a notice.
no,
Are you sure?
I'm positive. Positive. We can do a bunch of them in one night.
We can do them all in one night. It's just, do we need a separate notice because it is a separate public hearing theoretically for each applicant?
No.
Because an application for funds for the Victory is a separate application from an application for funds for the Richardson train station.
Right, but
In fact, I'm going to check with legal. You're almost certainly right, but I would be very
We
uncomfortable.
can list the agenda in the public notice, I guess that's what you call it, legal notice, that's gonna go in the paper, we can put an agenda.
Which paper, by the way?
It would have to be the Republican and the Sun, it has to be in 2,
Oh,
so it has to be the Republican and the Sun.
when you say it has to be, this is because, like, the ordinance?
This is a law, the law,
Yeah.
in
The
the law.
CPA law?
I
Or the
believe
city hall?
it's the
Open
main-
meetings.
The main Community Preservation Act.
Oh, so it is the CPA law, okay.
Yes.
You know what would be interesting for Amy is when we had that public meeting seminar,
Mm-hmm,
that was a PowerPoint presentation, right?
right.
Yeah.
Amy might benefit from viewing that.
Was that Libby who did that?
Yeah, Libby.
Did we ask her for, do we have a copy of it?
Oh,
It
the-
might be beneficial.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
good.
Well, I'm pretty sure we do. Because it was,
Was that on
recorded.
July 31st, or was that the one, the public hearing you did on July 31st?
It was sometime in July, yeah. It was sometime in
Yeah, it
July.
was
We
July.
had a
Yeah.
public
I remember
meeting
because that's my birthday.
at the
Senior
senior
center.
center to sort of introduce. or
Yeah,
the
and
whole-
we.
Yeah, that was July 31st.
That was July 30th, and we
'Cause I-
recorded it.
yeah.
It's recorded.
Prior to that, wasn't there this presentation on public meeting laws? I seem to recall there was something.
You mean the gentleman that came here, Mr. Saginaw, and talked to us?
definitely.
Oh, Saginaw came and talked to you?
Yes, and
Okay.
the very first night that we assembled.
All right, so can we pin down 2 days, the week of the 10th? Would you want to do it that week? So like, again, what, Wednesday and Friday, or, well, let's see, yeah.
Wednesday is, okay.
It's the 13th. Is that
13th
good,
and
everybody?
15th, Yeah.
6:45 again?
Well, we should probably make it 7.
Is this the
No.
public?
This is the
Public
public
hearing.
hearing.
So 7's good, yeah.
7,
now
we'll
in
make them
March?
both at 7 o'clock.
No, we're still in February.
Okay.
So,
February 13th and 15th at
so you're
7,
saying 7 PM to what time?
whatever time we need. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know if
There
I'll
may
be able to
rules
do.
about whether you can go beyond 10 without, there's at some point some city rule about maybe with joint consent of the committee you can go beyond 10, but I'll check that too.
We used to go to 1 o'clock in the morning on the city council.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not sure about the 15th in terms of my, when I have to leave. So would that be a problem if I had to leave earlier on the 15th? Okay.
I don't think
So should we say the 15th again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you said that 2 weeks in advance, I need to put a notice out for that, right?
Yes, yeah, well, and you can check with Ryan on
So
how to
that
do
would be the 30th. Notice must go out on January 30th.
And check with,
You could put the notice out today or tomorrow.
Yeah,
Just don't go beyond the 30th.
yeah, deadline, okay.
check with Ryan how you go about that. Where does it go? He knows how to do that. He does it for the city council all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And I will check with the senior center to see if we can have those 2 nights.
and maybe you'll look into that.
So don't post anything
I
until
thought that if we just listed all
I find
the
out if they're good.
applicants, was okay.
What I'm thinking is, like, if we continued as to one applicant, and do we have to then continue as to everybody? And we certainly don't if
Oh,
we have
Andrew, good.
individual public hearings.
Yes, thank you. You
Hey.
sure can.
Here's a letter from the commission stating that they'll take the land in fee, so.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Good night.
We can discuss it.
Okay. All right, so then after that, discuss and complete recommendations on projects. This is before drafting recommendations for the mayor. I don't really know why you have to
We do have
draft
to run it.
recommendations for the mayor,
We do
Yeah.
have to run it by him.
Why?
but he's not
We do.
really,
It's in the law. It's
Where?
part- In the, I don't know if it's the ordinance.
I think
or
I
the-
did see it, but I
Yes.
thought it was
Oh,
a
it's in the
little
ordinance?
Either in the
strange.
ordinance or the CP, Community Preservation Act, I forgot.
It's not
which
in the
one.
Community Preservation Act.
Yeah.
no.
Okay, so then
The
it's in-
mayor doesn't really have a say with us normally,
I
so.
don't think it's in the ordinance.
It's in the ordinance then.
But he can't really reject
Yeah.
it, can he?
No.
Because that would be against the CPA ordinance. I mean, the
Yeah.
broader CPA law is that it's the committee that makes the recommendations to city council.
Right.
And city council can accept or reject or lower the amount,
I forgot what the,
But I don't think the mayor can reject
I didn't put that in there,
it.
so I don't know what their reasoning was as to
Any-
why he has to have a say one way or the other about anything. I
Maybe
think
it's just so that he
it's just
knows what's going
informational,
on.
I think maybe,
Yeah.
Maybe
Like,
it's just informational.
in case there's something he knows that we don't know.
Yeah, it's, right. I mean, technically, he should know what's going on, not that he wants to have a say over it, but in case there's something else that he knows about that we don't know.
I could be wrong on this, but I think once the council approves it, it still has to go to him for his signature.
No,
No?
once you approve them, they're done.
I don't think so. But for some reason, I had that it had to be completed the week that we're doing the public hearings, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it can be the week of February 18th.
Yeah, well,
So should we say Wednesday, again, the 20th?
yes, we'll meet that night, and hopefully, we can,
6 PM?
We'll have a pretty
Or
good
6:45, right?
at that point in time, hopefully, we'll have a pretty good idea where we're coming from. On the, was that the 20th, you said?
Yes.
Yes.
6:45, right?
Yes.
For mayor, okay.
And sure enough, here it is, just for the record.
And
Oh, you found it?
And then we'll see where we're at as to whether we need more meetings before we make that.
No, oh, what'd you say, sorry?
If we meet on the 20th and we have a pretty good idea where we're at on what decisions we want to make that night, then we can send out our recommendations to the mayor and start to formalize our recommendations to the city council.
Well, okay, what I thought is that would be the meeting to discuss and draft the recommendations, and then we need another meeting to review the recommendations that will be drafted, because like, you know, you'll be discussing them, and then I guess I'll have to be drafting them, and then you'll need to like approve them. So I think the next week. See, what I'm following is kind of a template that I've seen another community use, and she really stressed to me, the staff person, that you really need to have a schedule that you know, stick to, otherwise it's not gonna all come together. So, I mean, when we get to these meetings, if we find, oh, we don't need that meeting, that could be a possibility, but I think it would be good to have another meeting.
Okay, so you want to meet the 27th? The next
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Okay, so review the drafted recommendations to mayor. 6:45, and then I had finalized council orders for March 7th. That's as far as I got.
Well,
Or
the
around that
mayor
week.
has 7 days to give us back comments.
Oh, so maybe that's why I thought it had to be earlier.
What was that, Mimi?
Yeah, I found the provision, and it reads, prior to making its final recommendations to City Council for approval, the committee shall present draft recommendations to the mayor, who shall return any comments to the committee within 7 days.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
Well, there would still be 7 days if we then worked on finalizing the council orders on March 6th or March 13th.
Well, if we, no, we don't have to go that early. Did you say March?
Yeah,
Okay, March, yes, because we're gonna approve our final recommendations the end of February, so we'll give them to them what is it, the 27th?
yes, that's
Okay,
the meeting,
we'll
but
give
now I'm
that-
talking
yeah.
about finalizing the council orders.
Okay, so that night, the 27th, we're gonna give them to the mayor the next day. And he's gonna have 7 days
Right,
to comment, so that'll bring us to March 6th. And then a week.
okay, so then when do you want to meet to work on the council orders?
Well, right around, either the 6th or the 13th, or we have to present them to them by the end of the month, right? We have till the end of the
So
month.
maybe we should do March 13th to start working on that, because then we'll know what the comments are from the mayor.
Yes, we will.
So should we say Wednesday, March 13th to
Yeah.
work on 6:45?
Okay, we scheduled, I'm gonna send these all out to everybody in an email.
Yeah, I can do that.
Or you can, whoever, yeah, that's fine too.
I could even do it the same way I did that with the Outlook. Does that work well to remind people, you know? And
Yep.
you know, I think it sends you an automatic reminder. Okay, and then there'll be more meetings probably after that, but I just wanted to iron out like what the plan is, so.
We might have to go to a city council meeting if they send these to committee for some reason and want us to come in to talk, or the applicants to come in and talk.
Yeah,
about
one
stuff.
thing I'm unclear on, like when I looked at, where is it,
Was that in the ordinance, Mimi, that you saw that?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm unclear on when the city council will be meeting to, you know, make a decision on this.
Well, that's up to them. We present it to them and we give them a time, I think we gave them a month to answer us in 30 days. They have to get back to us,
Okay, because,
depending when we give it to them.
oh, okay, you know what, I might have left something out here. Okay, well, I guess that last meeting that we just planned would be, we'll need to make a meeting for finalizing the recommendations to city council.
Okay, that's gonna be it, right? The
The 13th?
13th?
Okay.
They have a meeting the 19th, we can present them the 19th.
Oh, they have a meeting the 19th. Okay. Well, I don't know if one meeting will be enough to put all, have all the language ready, for the council orders.
Well, hopefully they won't be that much different from what we gave to the mayor. That's,
Isn't it in a different type of, okay. I thought it has to be written up a different way when it goes to the city council. Okay, hopefully not. All right, maybe that's true.
and I don't know what that should look like, because I've never
Okay.
seen one.
Yeah, because what I'm looking at is, how the goal is to award, send the award letters by, towards the end of April and have the grant agreements executed sometime in May. Yeah, okay. So, what's next?
On the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. Then it was other business. Brian's not here, so we can't have a discussion with him regarding his minutes.
Oh, I have other business.
Oh, okay, under other business, yes.
Actually, Rosemary, you might want to talk about this too. I did give you that sheet, so it's sort of, you can look that over for the different projects and see what questions we're asking. But also, there's been an update on the Rock Valley Road, the Glowtech property. I heard from Lee Halaz, is that how you say his name?
He's Australian, so it's hard to say that.
Okay.
Something like that.
And I met with Rosemary too, and do you want to explain it?
I can probably
Okay.
explain it.
Yeah.
So we gave an update on this after some of the questions that came through. So two things. I did talk to Amy yesterday about this, and we looked up. I wasn't sure if I had to recuse myself from this project because I'm on the board of directors for Kestrel and also on conservation. But after looking at that, we realized that if you're not paid by either company, then there's no conflict. So, so I can comment and I can vote. So we wanted to make sure that was correct. So I just wanted any input
Yeah,
from anybody.
and you also might want to look at the link I sent you just to be
Yeah, I
absolutely
did.
sure.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
Yeah.
You could give a letter to the city clerk's office just stating that you're on both of those boards.
Okay, that would be
Just
fine.
for information.
Yeah, that's right. They talked about disclosure.
Right, just disclosure. So anyway, the update on the Glowtech property is that we walked it last week, and we wanted to make sure, we wanted to see if we could find the pins and just follow up, because we all hadn't been out there and really done some exploring, and we wanted to make sure that it was ready for us to take it on. So we found most of the pins, but one of the things that we did find is on the border that borders the Marcia Cassidy's house and property, which is another parcel, that she had a horse barn, a very small one, that kind of encroaches a little bit, and then also just some old boats, like so many farmers kind of throw everything to the side. So one of our suggestions was to just take out that part so that it's not an issue for the city. And so that's one of the options. So we're kind of in a conversation right now with her lawyer and her in terms of the survey. A survey would have to be done to, well, it has to be done for the property anyway, but we wanted to make sure we either take out that acre so that there's not a problem for the city, and then we could either add acreage, another acre in the back property, which is woodland, and there's not anything there, if she agrees to that. If not, we would just take out an acre and then bring the price down by $3,000. So right now we're looking for, we have to do two things that didn't get put in that CPA project, where that there has to be a survey done, which we're getting quotes on right now, which usually runs, we're just putting a cap on it at 10,000.
Yeah, that's what Lee has said.
Right, and then also the city, Andrew thought that maybe the expenses of the closing and the title search would would
Andrew
just be,
Smith, the one who.
right, that was just in here, would just be part of the city project, so we want to make sure that it either is, or then we'll allocate 5,000 towards that. So Kestrel has voted to do, to contribute to the due diligence on this, and I think that they talked about, you know, being helpful once we find out what the quotes are. And then also, so what they did was they've added an addendum to, at this point, to just say that they might have to either subtract 3,000 from the proposal for her, but in the meantime, maybe kick up the pricing by 10%.
Well, Lee didn't mention the thing about the, you know,
Right,
lowering
we're not
3,000.
sure how
He
that's,
said that probably 10,000, they're gonna have to redo a budget, which they'll
Right.
get to us as soon as possible. So it would be 10,000 to survey the land, and it probably will be that they have to work in the legal fees for
Right.
5,000, because I checked with Crystal Barnes, the current
Okay.
city solicitor, and she said that they would have to go outside, and there are costs, it looked like, so
right,
to
it couldn't
do
be
that
done
closing and
in-house.
recording and the title search that has to
Right.
be done. So, so it sounds like, yeah, that would have to,
So
the budget has to
be
adjusted.
a new budget proposed for the 22nd. But they wanted to just give you a heads up because they knew you were meeting this evening, so just to let you know that, you know, there's some moving pieces.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that he said in his email that they're going to reduce the amount that they were going to budget for their project management. Kestrel's going to reduce that, you know, to try
To help out. Yep.
to, you know, lessen the cost that they're asking for. So he wrote a long email about it, and actually the lawyer for Marcia Cassidy called me
Oh, really?
to answer one of the questions, I guess, that I had asked, so,
Nice.
yeah.
I think he's a Holyoke lawyer. I'm not sure what his name is.
He did, they did mention that it might take a few weeks to get survey quotes, so,
Right.
but I guess that's okay, there's enough time, there's a little time for them to answer these questions.
And
so.
hopefully they'll have it by the 22nd.
Yeah, that'll be great,
Right.
so. Yeah, so that's the update on that, and I think that's all.
Well, I obviously have one because I brought it up in passing at the beginning of the meeting. I didn't quite realize what these dates were going to look like when I said, please, somebody else needs to be secretary. But, you know, I obviously am struggling to keep up with
Yeah.
the paperwork as it is. I have travel in February that I will do my best to work around these dates. But I'm obviously not going to be able to keep up with 2 meetings a week for the foreseeable future. There's no way. I cannot
Yeah, I
continue
don't
to do
think this
this.
whole process of doing the minutes is very efficient, like,
Well, here's the thing, you know, Brian can do them, and I've been reading them, he sends them to me too, so, and I've been reading
Yeah.
them, and I give him suggestions back, so, you know, if the committee's okay with it, I will be the one that okays the minutes for him to present to us. I mean, if we were caught up, this shouldn't be a problem, we should have one set of minutes every meeting.
Right.
If, you know, this has gotten to be a problem, only because there's been so much backup here on not getting the
Well,
minutes on time.
also because I feel myself, if I am the one going over them, that I also have a responsibility to go over them very carefully and to condense them and to make sure that everything in them reasonably conforms to my memory of it. And it takes a while.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take me long, I just go over them in a few minutes, and I find the mistakes, I tell him the mistakes, and he corrects them, and then that's it, so, I mean,
well-
I probably won't do it as well as you do, but they'll be good enough.
Yeah,
They'll
and
just-
I'm
they'll be
perfectly
good enough.
happy to go with that. The problem is that if I'm not doing them, I don't see that I can sign off on them as secretary, and therefore I should resign as secretary.
Well, you don't have to do that, you can still be secretary, you don't have to sign off on the minutes. Nobody has to sign off on the minutes, as long as we have a record of them. They don't have to be signed off, so, you know, that's my opinion anyway. I think we can
Okay,
work
well-
around it, and we just have I already looked at the two
Yeah,
that we
no,
didn't.
I'm not
yeah.
concerned particularly about the 2 that are a backlog now.
Right,
I'm just
because I
looking
already looked at
ahead
them, yeah.
and, you know, it is clear that what I was doing before the backlog fell on my head, I will not be able to continue to do. And as long as that's okay with everybody, fine. I would feel very remiss if I didn't point it out now and just let things pile up and let people think that I was going to get to it.
Well,
As I say, I can't keep up with two.
it wasn't your fault that they got backed up. Let's put it that way. So, that's fine.
Well, but
But I
I
think
did
if
have
we-
drafts.
If, in the future, if we just have one set of minutes, I mean, that shouldn't be a problem for any of us, for Ryan, for you, or for me to oversee and make sure they're done and ready for the next meeting. And I don't know what we're gonna do when the applicants, that's gonna, do we have to do minutes for all those meetings?
That's a good
Yes.
question. For the public hearings?
Well, at least
Yeah. I mean, I know they have to be recorded, but do we have to do actual physical minutes for them too? Because that's kind of,
Yeah.
ordinance does it, planning board does it. We have
yeah.
minutes for our public hearings, and I can't imagine why the rules for us would be different.
Okay, well, we have to do it. We have
Sometimes
to do it.
I kind of wish that the minutes could be done in the old-fashioned way, where somebody just sits in the meeting and writes
Well,
things
that's
down.
what he's doing. That's what Ryan's doing here.
But I mean, what he does, I think, is very time-consuming, because well, I guess that's true. He listens to the whole thing as a recording. But sometimes if you're there, I think it's easier to absorb the gist of what's happening. And he's had to ask me a lot of times, for materials for the meetings that he missed, because he can't, like when we did it in the annex, it was very hard to hear. It was inaudible. We didn't have these microphones, so it almost makes more sense if somebody's just right there, like the way Megan was doing, and just sort of typing up something. But
There's someone who can actually multitask. I find the problem is I can take notes or I can actually
That's
listen
the
to what's
same with
going
me.
on.
Like, I'm thinking going forward, if this were to become, like, I would have a lot of trouble, participating in the meeting and also taking notes. So, yeah, that's.
Yeah, I actually had a law professor who screamed at
Does
people who took
Megan,
notes.
now, what is Megan's role? Does she want to volunteer?
She said
help
she
us
was
out?
coming here, so I wonder if she's giving birth right now.
Yeah, she could be, because she looked like she was ready.
She had
to-
accepted the invite.
But,
so
I mean, in
that's
the-
why I
in the-
brought this over.
Yeah, in the future, if she wants to volunteer to help us with the minutes, she could do them first here, and then, I don't know, then,
can't those just be good enough?
well,
Oh, those were
right.
brilliant. I would
Because
accept those.
to me, the value of the minutes is to be able to look back also. I mean, yes, it's the public record, but it's also would be valuable to us to be able to just look at something, and not something endless, but, just get the gist of what was discussed, But I don't know if, like, literally you have to say something when every person speaks. Like,
Yeah.
that's.
Well, Ryan still has to be with us to post the meetings and to make sure they're recorded. I mean,
When you say post the meetings, you mean email the agendas?
No, he has to put them on the city's website.
He has to put the minutes on the city's website?
Oh, no, the meeting notices, not the minutes. I'm not talking about, Ryan's job is to post the meetings.
Oh, so when you
Post.
say that, like, say the date that we're meeting?
Right, he
Okay,
has
I
to
haven't even
post
know.
it. He
Okay.
has to post it in,
All right.
in,
On the calendar, okay.
on the city's website,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure this meeting is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So if Megan wanted to do the minutes, and that would,
Well, she's also gonna have a baby, so she might be a little busy.
Well, I
And
don't
she's a teacher full-time, but I don't know. Maybe she has enough help that she could do that. I don't know.
I don't know her to be in touch with her. Who knows her? Megan?
Well, I mean, I'm in
She
touch
come
with
from?
her.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in touch with her, okay.
I mean, through email, yeah.
Okay, well, ask her if she's available to be if she wants to volunteer
Mm-hmm.
to do our minutes.
Yeah, I don't know if I could.
If she doesn't,
I'll let
then
her
that's
know
fine.
what our schedule is, though, for February, because I don't know, if she's a new mother, might not have time to meet that
Exactly.
often, yeah, so, or energy.
But it's worth it, just ask her. It's worth asking her.
Okay.
And then that will free him up from having to do the minutes, and I looked over her minutes when she did them, they were perfect.
But you don't really mean February, you mean maybe the next fiscal year you're talking about, or?
I don't know, I'm just trying to find a way to resolve this in the future here, as starting right now, after this.
So
meeting.
then, basically, Ryan wouldn't be doing minutes at all anymore? Oh.
no.
Yeah, but I doubt that she's gonna be able to go to all those meetings, when she has a baby that's just
Ryan
born.
might not be able to make all those meetings either, so.
That's true. So, I mean, if she can't, I could also put out a notice on, social media. Would anybody be up for this to volunteer, to take minutes? I don't know, but I'll ask her. I'll ask her.
And I don't know, maybe we could pay them a couple hours. It's because we won't be paying him for that.
That's true.
I don't know. We need to have we need to think about this and have a better discussion.
Yeah, actually, if you can offer pay, that'll be a lot more appealing than just there might be more chance that you could get somebody, even if it's a student or something,
Well, we'll have to talk to Ryan first anyways and see, and make sure that he can make those meetings. He's gonna have to keep up on the minutes because there's gonna be a bunch.
And it's gonna be a lot, yeah.
It's going to be really substantive stuff, too.
Yes.
So, yeah, because it would be nice to be able to look back and see, oh, what did we discuss last meeting, even for
Yeah,
us.
that's what I do to help me
Yeah,
do the agenda, and
right,
and I'll try to keep a dialogue going here.
yeah.
So anyway, so anything else on, so you're still gonna be our secretary, Mimi? You're
I
not
guess
getting
so.
out of it.
Wait, how will she, what will your
well-
role be?
Yeah, no, I don't mind the title. I just don't want to be promising to do things that I'm not delivering.
I don't blame you, and that's a really hard job.
In the meantime, I will make sure that Brian does the minutes for tonight's meeting and has them ready for our next
Great.
meeting.
Yeah, it would almost be better if he worked on the last meeting's minutes before doing all the backlog, I don't know, just so we can see what was done.
Well, he's caught up now,
Yeah.
except for this meeting.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
It's just that February is going
Oh,
to
it
be
just
really
has to be
rough.
approved, okay.
The only thing is the 12/17 meeting, he has to add something to that, because he left out a whole section, which I will talk to him about. Okay?
Okay, I also just want to mention that in the charts I gave you, there was some stuff that was researched in the city solicitor office to do with debts owed to the city, and I noted that, so if you read it over, you'll see that. But there's still probably more research that could be done on these applicants. Another thing is that John Tansey does not own, I think it's 346 Maple Street, that's on there. He doesn't own it. That deal never went through.
Oh,
And, but he said, oh yeah, it's more complicated than I thought, and it might,
I have been in touch with him, so he will be responding by the 20th.
yeah, I spoke to him also, yeah, so.
okay, anything else under discussion, other business?
Was the next meeting the 25th?
Yes, no, the 23rd, Wednesday. Wednesday, the 23rd. Yes. Okay,
Make sure you look at that one first.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Good job.
Thank you.
And I remember the public meeting date, that